Welcome to House Einstein podcast number 28. I am Osman with House Einstein, and with
I'm
me is Hamish
Hamish.
Crab. Go ahead, Hamish.
Oh, well, I'm Hamish Crab. Should I jump into the intro?
Welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us. And our mission at the House Einstein podcast is to help you make a smarter real estate decision. Our background is something we might want to mention a little bit. I've been doing this over 20 years, working in real estate primarily in Boulder, Colorado, but our brokerage serves everywhere from Denver to Fort Collins and into the mountains, particularly a few of the resort communities, as well as some of the Boulder mountain towns.
That's right. I've been here just under 2 years. It'll come up in February. And prior to that, I had a little bit of real estate experience when I was around 18. Right now, I'm helping the brokerage, contract showings, and a lot of marketing duties as well. It's always great to be here.
Thanks, Hamish. Thanks for joining us. And if you're new to the pod, consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. Subscribing really helps get the word out. And our mission is to help all people with real estate matters. But if you are not a House Einstein client, the best way to think about this podcast is as entertainment. That keeps our attorneys happy. And if you are a client, pick up the phone and call us if you have real estate questions or needs. We are here to serve you. But otherwise, if you're just tuning in and listening to the pod, consult with your own real estate advisor, your own financial advisor. Fiduciary responsibility is something we take seriously, but we don't represent you unless you have a client relationship with us.
That's right.
All right. Cut to the chase on the disclaimer.
Yep. Nailed it.
Okay, this week, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about market conditions. We're going to talk about the prime effect. That's Coach Deion Sanders and whether that is real or not when it comes to real estate. We're going to touch on some local events, and we're going to talk about what we're up to in the fourth quarter here at House Einstein. We're also going to discuss our sale of the week, and if we've got some time, we're going to add a new feature, a new topic to the pod called the question of the week, and then we'll wrap it up. Hopefully the podcast will take about an hour. That's usually our goal, is to keep it to about an hour. And we deeply appreciate you listening to us, and we love the comments we've been getting. And of course, our new clients that reach out to us after hearing the pod. And I guess, I don't know what they're doing while they're listening. Maybe they're doing laundry, maybe they're doing chores. Podcasting is such an interesting thing, but we really appreciate you trusting us and choosing us to represent you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Initially derailing the topic plan just slightly. Osman, you have a different backdrop and slightly different audio today.
That's right. Thank you for bringing that up. I've been out and about today and working from our office currently. So normally I record the podcast from my home office, where I do a lot more work than my office here in North Boulder. But today I'm at the actual office right in Uptown Broadway. And the acoustics are a little different. I don't have all the sound deadening. I don't have the mic or the headphones. And hopefully through the magic of technology and Hamish's efforts, the sound quality is okay.
I've got faith. Alrighty. So, market conditions. I noticed you tweeted maybe a half hour ago, if that, some interesting stats. So you want to take it away?
Absolutely. November data was just released. And when data is this fresh, there's sometimes some inconsistencies. So when I was looking at the data between the MLS systems, that's the Denver MLS is Colorado, and Boulder's is called IRES. It really isn't just Boulder. It's sort of the North Denver suburbs all the way to Fort Collins. That's IRES, and everything else all the way down south on the Front Range to Colorado Springs is Colorado. But sometimes these databases don't completely align. They're close. But some of the statistics were matching up. I always look for data consistency. So I have to remember what I was tweeting. Because really what's on my mind is not what happened last month, it's what's happening in the future. And what's happening in the future is largely going to be driven by rates and a market that I think is going to start waking up after a year of being quite cool. Because rates have started to fall markedly, and they're following the 10-year Treasury. And the 10-year Treasury just dropped below 4.2, and we're now seeing rates hovering right around 7% for the 30-year fixed rate, which is fantastic news for buyers. It means homes are going to be more affordable, and inventory is still up substantially, so there's more selection than there has been in many years. So buyers that move quickly can enjoy some of that inventory. Personally, playing market analyst, nobody has a crystal ball, but I don't think we're going to see dramatic price declines. Instead, we've seen prices up. And this is the data from November. The median price in the city of Boulder for single-family houses was up about 10%. So the median sale price in Boulder was $800,000. In Denver, the median price last month slipped about 1.8% to $653,000. So small decreases year over year in Denver, but up in Boulder. And sales volume was down in Boulder. This is Boulder County, by the way, not the city of Boulder, 3.2%. And in Denver, down 17.5%. So
Wow.
the market is slowing, but prices still, in Boulder anyway, rose a little bit. In Denver, slipped a little bit. I don't think these price changes are massive. But with the increased inventory that is still on the market and likely to be on the market in January with even more, I think it's a really good time to enjoy the extra selection. You may not get a deal. You may not see like a big discount. I mean, you will from where the market peaked in prices in 22, but you won't see, you'll get at least more options. Like you may not have a bidding war. So it's up to you. Play your roulette with rates if you want. But I think rates have peaked and they're on their way down.
I mean, I'm going to knock on some wood here. Yeah, the whole rates conversation is interesting. It's almost kind of, you see a market difference by, you could call it like a 0.5%. Each time you see that, suddenly, prices kind of shift a little bit, and then there's just like a slight uptick in activity. I think as they lower, right, selection's going to slowly reel back, and those that are more capable to purchase at the higher rates, though declining, are going to get a better selection out of there than those who can only, say, purchase something worth it at around 5 or 6%.
And I think that's the right way to think about it from a broad market perspective. When we're talking about luxury homes in the
Yeah.
city of Boulder, rates are almost irrelevant. In fact, what seems to matter more is how the stock market is trading than rates, because people aren't borrowing with 30-year fixed rate mortgages to buy $3 and $4 million houses. They're trading assets from one aspect of their portfolio, one component of their portfolio into another. So they're moving from equities to real estate. It's a very different calculus than people that are monthly payment tied. But a large part of the market is monthly payment tied throughout the county. But when it comes to the luxury segment, it's not. Whether you're in Denver or Boulder, it
Whole
operates on
different
its
ball
own.
game.
It's a different ball game.
Yeah.
It's tied to wealth. It's not tied to affordability.
No.
And there is a middle ground, by the way. There is this gray weird zone that can be somewhat difficult to predict how it's going to play out. And it's kind of strange, but I think of that up to basically 2 million, you might have some impact with rates, but above 2 million, it's usually a cash deal anyway.
Yeah, pretty minimal. I wonder if we can find a relationship or some sort between the stock market and the Boulder housing market.
We looked for one because back when I worked on Nantucket, that was the thesis back then too.
Oh, really?
That forget about rates, it's all about the stock market. And we didn't, it was an interesting analysis idea, like it was pitched as maybe we should go down that rabbit hole, but
It's
at the
a
end of the
rabbit hole.
day, it's sort of an obvious fact. It just smells right. And we're practitioners, not analysts on CNBC.
Right.
It doesn't matter and we're not doing some academic paper.
Is it Kramer? He does the show that's like buy or we're not that.
We're not definitely not Kramer. But I mean, some academic can make that argument and go prove it. I think that's a good PhD topic to do it on a national level and establish a price point that is deemed luxury, and then see how it correlates to the stock market movements. But it's so obvious for everyone else that a practitioner, I don't know if it adds any value for us to do that analysis.
Yeah. More just to scratch an itch.
Yep. But one of the takeaways is when data is this fresh, you should be careful with the conclusions you draw, especially if you're using the database for Denver in Boulder or Boulder in Denver, because the database doesn't update that fast, and sometimes it's erroneous, especially when I compare the two and they're not matching. Like they matched on price, but they did not match on inventory. There was a big discrepancy, and I'm like, that doesn't look right, so I'm not going to tweet about it. But if you're looking for that data, you can see it on my tweet. The data that I think is accurate, not the non-accurate, incoherent data.
At Osman Parvez on X or Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so I think we've beaten the market conditions topic to death. The last point that I'd like to add is bargain season's basically over. Maybe this week is the end of it, because if you're not closing by the end of the year, sellers are looking at next year's buyers coming in. They're also reading the news and seeing that rates are dropping. Hope springs eternal. They're going to pull their listing off the market in the next week or two, before the holidays certainly, and bring it back in January. And the only listings you usually see coming to market this time of year are things like estate sales. People want to get it done and get out. And in fact, we'll talk about one of those that happened this week in our listing of the week segment.
That's right.
We'll get
also,
there.
nail on the head. I think I'm in radical agreement with you. I think just in the news alone, sellers might get a little bit less able to play with you, less willing to play.
Well, and they should be in January and February. They should be less negotiable than June and July. And like there's a negotiability pendulum based on seasonal factors and also based on how long the listing has been on the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so not the Amazon effect, but the Prime effect.
Coach Prime. Have not met Coach Prime. Although, have I mentioned this on the pod before, my connection with Coach Prime?
You may have. You should also bring up the little house search we did when he was signed. Yeah.
Tongue in cheek. So back when it was announced he was coming, I did a tongue in cheek, which homes should Coach Prime buy? And hand selected, I think, 5 or 6 houses, maybe even 10, for fun, that I would consider, if I were Coach Prime, things like privacy and proximity to CU, so you could get to campus quickly, and enough space for his family and friends. And we narrowed it down to only a handful of houses. What he bought, and this is another topic entirely, and I don't want to invade his privacy, but what he bought, based on our research, is nothing in the city. He's out, not even in the county. He is way out in Weld somewhere, or out in Longmont in north of Highway 66 or something like that. He's way out there. But that's cool. It's like a little pocket subdivision out in farmland somewhere where there's like 6 neighbors and everyone has 2 or 3 acres of land, and he can have more privacy.
If it works, it works, right?
His commute's got to suck.
You helicopter in, right? At that point,
there's no way he's helicoptering in. He's driving in, or he's more likely being driven in a dark, tinted SUV. But
regardless,
what a pain! Like he's in the car every day for at least 30 minutes.
Yeah,
guaranteed. That's an hour a day, 5 hours a week. Each 5 hours a week.
Gone minimum.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
Easy. Which maybe he's listening to this podcast. Podcasts are a good way to waste time. Well, to use time on a commute.
In case you didn't know, Dion.
Yeah, in case you didn't know. Check out our podcast. So there has been pitched this idea that Coach Prime is having an economic effect on Boulder. And there was a study done, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce, and you can pull this up, Hamish, if you want while I'm talking, that said that every game is bringing in X many millions of dollars into the city of Boulder. I think that might be true, but for sure, what's true is ticket prices went up massively this year. Tickets sold out, and Boulder has suddenly become on the national stage for anybody that follows football at the college level, and even beyond that. Like he's on Saturday Night Live. He's been on Saturday Night Live before, but now he's being parodied on Saturday Night Live. He's got so many commercials. And Boulder gets mentioned over and over and over again. So that effect is definitely true, that he's had a net positive effect on the image of Boulder by elevating it in the national consciousness, even if as a team we didn't do so great. The portal, we did better than we had in years, and now the portal's open, and maybe we'll be even better next year. And I think we will, because he's got such an oversized personality, and is able to bring so much attention to Boulder that I think there'll be players that choose Boulder just because they get to work with Prime. They get to have him as a coach.
Yeah, I believe that. Have you gone to any games this season?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm actually not, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not really into football.
Dangerous to say
Well,
here.
look, I mean, the reality is football is kind of a bad sport, right? It causes brain damage in young people. Like, this is not, I wasn't allowed to play football. I was allowed to play tennis. I was allowed to run track and go skiing. But soccer was fine, but football was not an option. And I think,
Actually, same.
yeah, with parents that love their children, that know something about head trauma, you may not want to put your kid in anyway. So my parents obviously didn't let me play football. As doctors, they were like, "Oh no, no football for you." That's okay. That's all right. But what's the prime effect when it comes to real estate? That's really what we're trying to talk about. And I don't think it's going to have any effect when it comes to, like, I don't think it's people that are coming to Boulder because of Coach Prime specifically, but
Right.
because it raises Boulder's profile in the national consciousness, there will be more people that think of Boulder as a potential place to live and be, that may not have thought about it before, particularly people of color. I would say that Boulder has, because of its reputation for a lack of diversity, having such a high profile African American talk about Boulder constantly and in the news in Boulder constantly, and his whole entourage in Boulder, that's really positive for Boulder's image and will help, I think, attract a more diverse student population, and also ultimately could result in more diversity in the people that are relocating here. And Boulder real estate is largely driven by people moving here, because that's what's creating a huge influx of demand. It has for many decades. I've written about this for so many years. It's kind of crazy, but there's this virtual cycle that also happens with entrepreneurship here in Boulder. We've had a number of very high profile companies founded in Boulder and it become very large in Boulder and spin off a whole bunch of executives that had exits. And all those people, after they get their liquidity event, as people in the entrepreneurship high growth world like to call it, after they get paid, well, they buy an expensive house, and they also, what do? They also go and create 2 or 3 other companies, and they donate back to our nonprofits, and all of that is this virtuous cycle that tied in with the university and the federal labs that makes Boulder really a special place. Also, all of the outdoor recreation that, in my opinion, is unparalleled. There's almost nothing else in the world like what we have.
Which all goes together to create just a really unique area as a whole, right? I mean, Boulder's just special. That's how it's been.
There's very few places that you can step outside your door and be on the trails. Anywhere west of Broadway, you can be on a trail probably within a 10-minute walk. And world-class trails, and also world-class athletes training here.
Yeah.
People really care about health, obsessive about health. So that's the real effect of virtuous cycles in Boulder. Those are the things that attract people here. But certainly, I think Coach Prime is raising our profile in the national consciousness. And I don't know, I hope it is successful. I hope it does attract more diverse groups of people to move here, for sure. And does that result in increased real estate values? I mean, real estate values are supply and demand, economics 101, increasing demand for a very limited resource. Um, I'm reminded of a very funny thing somebody said to me once. So this is a complete segue.
Okay. Keep
I
this.
think you'll like the story. Anyways, I think you'll like the story. So, as a fellow car aficionado, back when I first moved to Boulder, and I was quite broke, just getting started, right? Just getting started in real estate. I went back to work in the investment community. I found a company in Denver to go work for that was fantastic, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities they created. And so I worked in the capital markets and real estate for the first 3 years. I was in Boulder, back in Boulder, and there was a Craigslist ad or something for an old Mercedes diesel wagon, and for some reason
Nice.
I had these old diesel wagons on the brain. Right, I just
Oh,
couldn't get the
it's a
W
bug.
one, yeah, the W123 class, right, and it had to be a wagon. It couldn't be a sedan, and I was just into it. My dad had one growing up as a kid, and that purring diesel engine was something I always would remember, like when he would come home at night, like I could hear that engine. I'm like, oh, my father's home. Like it was an emotional thing. And he stored this car in the winter. He didn't drive it in the winter, so it was like this precious thing. It's the first car I actually ever illegally drove on the road. I was 11. He let me drive it, and he rode shotgun down the public road. I know, crazy behavior,
Nah.
but went to go look at this used diesel
That's
wagon.
small town New York. You're totally in
Yeah,
character there. That's
upstate New
great.
York. Went
Upstate,
to go
yeah.
look at this diesel wagon here in Boulder, and at the time, biodiesels were all the rage, and this one had been converted with injectors or something to be more accepting of biodiesel. And the guy that was selling it was a mechanic, worked on old Mercedes diesel engines and vehicles here, and this had been his vehicle for a while. He was selling it, and we took it for a test drive. And it really wasn't for me; it was for my friend Jose. And I was trying to talk Jose into it, and the mechanic seller was listening to the whole conversation and hearing us hem and haw about the price, and he's like. And I told him I don't think, and Jose tried to get me to buy it, and I was like, I can't buy it. Like my wife's gonna kill me, who's now my
Yeah.
ex-wife, by the way. And this guy looks at me. His name's Tom, and this is the first time I ever met Tom. Tom looks at me and he goes, they're not making any more diesel wagons.
You know that's still the argument for like classic cars too, right? They don't make it anymore.
Yeah, that's the first time I ever heard that, and it's also true for Boulder real estate. We're extremely limited on supply, while the buyers come from all over the country and all over the world. In many cases, we can't increase meaningfully single-family house supply here because of regulatory restrictions on development, but also because of no available land. The county and the city have bought up all the open space around Boulder that are directly adjacent to Boulder, other than the planning reserve, and and designated it as no longer available for large-scale development. So at some point, the planning reserve is likely going to be developed, but other than that, I can't think of another giant parcel of undeveloped or lesser developed land. The planning reserve actually is developed. There are houses there, but there are houses on large lots. Many of them, I think they're all on septic. So
In that
at
North
some
Boulder
point,
area.
that is north of Highway 36.
Yeah.
Yeah, right before it meets Broadway on the north side. It looks like open space with occasionally kind of ranchy looking houses tucked in there. It's right near the Boulder Rifle Club. And all of that is at some point, because it's designated as the planning reserve and we have so much demand for housing, will be developed, and it's going to be a fight because it looks like open space, but it likely at some point is going to be high density.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What do you think? Right, supply demands. Boulder prices are already, median for a single family home. I think we're sitting around the $1 million mark now.
800,000, and that
Oh,
was for the county.
okay.
For the city, it's more like 1.5. I mean, I can look this up while we're talking. I think it's closer to 1.5. The problem with median or any data for the city is that the the sample size is so small that there's a lot of variability
Mm-hmm.
in what is the median price. But let me just pull it up really quick. My memory says 1.5. Let's see if I'm right. Boulder.
And
Oh, so I just mentioned that I think the planning reserve is likely going to be higher density or high. I mean, what counts as high density for Boulder, and that's largely because of the demand for housing. So single-family houses on significantly sized lots, there's just no opportunity to meaningfully increase supply.
yeah, it's I mean, there's a ceiling, right? And we get to see it kind of traded over and over, right? It's kind of what the market will bear, what sellers are getting. You know, we saw prices kind of drop this year versus last year. And I know you've noticed on average, right, Boulder tends to perform quite well compared to the surrounding cities and areas. Do you ever see a situation where that kind of Boulder's performance would spill over to the surrounding areas?
I mean, for sure, Boulder drives the surrounding areas, the
Mm-hmm.
L's. Hold on one second. Let
Yeah,
me
the
just wrap up
L's.
the question before we go too far down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
The median sale price in the city of Boulder for detached single-family houses, the traditional single-family house, was just under 1.4 last month. So roughly about 1.5. It bounces around a lot on a month-by-month basis.
And
So you have
remembering the sample size issue too, right?
remembering the sample size issue. So your question was, is there an impact to the surrounding cities in Boulder, like the L's? We affectionately call it the L's, Louisville, Lafayette, Longmont. And the answer is absolutely. There's tens of thousands of people that drive into Boulder every day for work. And they've chosen to be in Boulder County or close to the city of Boulder. And if they had their way, they would be in the city of Boulder if they could afford it. A lot of people would rather be in the city of Boulder. You're closer to the foothills. You're closer to Pearl Street. You're closer to all the restaurants, the university. I mean, not that there's not great restaurants outside of the city. There are, but most people would rather be in the crown jewel.
In the heart,
It's
right?
it's sort of like 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, Manhattan and the boroughs, right? Like people would choose to choose Brooklyn or choose New Jersey or Westchester County because they can't afford to have what they want in the city of Boulder. You can't afford you can't afford what you want in Manhattan. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Okay.
No. I have one more follow up before we
Okay.
go back. Do you, I am pretty much in agreement with you, but I also, for some reason, haven't really asked this train of questions from you yet, so I'm just curious. Boulder's impact on the L's and even kind of a little bit further out is apparent, and I think they're quite related. Is it to the point where, if Boulder's market does poorly, it's going to reflect the same kind of in kind, or do you think the delta between Boulder's pricing on houses and then the L's and then even a little bit further away is just far enough away where it kind of skates sideways? I've heard you say that term a lot.
I think I get what you're asking, and I'll answer the question with first. I really appreciate you asking questions, so keep
Yeah.
doing that. That's great. Like I'm being interviewed. That's totally
I
cool.
got you.
And we didn't have any time. You didn't ask me this in prep, so this is, dear readers, this is coming out of left field. He's just throwing stuff at me. Um, so in the last economic cycle, which included the global financial crisis, the last major recession, there was a massive run-up in housing, right? Prices nationwide saw a significant downturn. There were bubble markets all over the country. I was blogging like crazy, arguing Boulder as a city is not going to see major declines, but lots of places are because Boulder did not see classic bubble behavior, which is usually indicated by people, flipping contracts, volume out of control, inventory ballooning 10 times what it normally did. Places like Phoenix and Vegas, which saw massive supply increases, they were really subject to large price declines, and they did. They saw massive price declines. If you look at that movie, The Big Short, they're in Florida looking at what's going
Yeah.
on, right? You don't see that kind of supply expansion in Colorado anywhere, but definitely not in the city of Boulder for the reasons we already talked about. So what actually happened Well, what actually happened was the L's saw a much faster correction and a much steeper correction. So Boulder prices were very sticky on the downside. And largely that's because of the ownership of Boulder real estate historically has been more financially capable and more affluent people. And nobody wants to take a loss on, especially on real estate, but really on anything in life. And
Right.
so people, if they could afford to, held on. In some cases, there were sellers that capitulated, and there were some builders that capitulated, some developers that capitulated, and so I saw as much as 40% haircuts in prices on certain, data points, like select data points, and then
Wow.
by that I mean select sales, unique individual sales. Like wow, they got creamed. The Peloton got killed too. So the Peloton phase one just finished completion as the bubble started bursting, and prices, were off. I think I had charts on the blog, which are probably still visible at houseeinstein.com. These charts went down. These same units went down like 30% in value. So the high end
Jeez.
in Boulder statistically saw roughly about a 5% price decrease, and sorry, 20% price decrease, and the entry level saw only 5%. And that's
Wow.
largely because the entry level has so much demand, and they call this depth of market. In the financial markets, there's depth of market for the entry level. For every single listing, there is 5 buyers that is lining up for a basic entry level ranch. But at the high end, at that time, there was not that much demand, and those that did come to market at that time saw a really big decrease in value, 20% or more. There was more than 2 years of inventory for high end homes, which was, now you think there's 3 months of inventory, 4 months of inventory.
And we're
I think
happy.
I think it finally leveled out. There's supposed to be 5 or 6 months in a healthy market. That's roughly where we are right now. And 2 years of inventory is just mind blowing. But that's where we were in 2007 at the high end of the market. But what happened in the L's? The L's corrected much faster. So inventory came down much faster. Inventory prices dropped much faster, and then bounced back up faster than Boulder. And Boulder just kind of stayed steady state.
A bit of a lag, but not much.
A significant lag. And
Yeah.
so the conclusion I reached at watching that as a practitioner in the market was that Boulder is a safe place to invest, particularly at the entry level. And you could say that at all price points if you wait long enough, but the entry level lost almost no value. And the
Yeah,
duration of that
5%.
downturn, that's the other piece. The duration was really short for the entry level and quite long for the high end. So there was like Martin Acres, for example, suddenly saw a large amount of inventory. And I think this was like 2008 or 2009, the very bottom. There was suddenly a lot of houses, and the prices dipped about 5% for your basic entry level ranch. And then boom, it was off to the races right after that. So that downturn was so short for entry level
Because the
that
depth of market, right, was so
it would,
huge.
yeah, you blink. I guess depth of demand would have been a better term,
Yeah.
but you blinked and you missed it, right? And versus the high end, you had lots of time to choose houses and negotiate deals. Now this is 2023. It's been a long time since that downturn, but I think the basics are still the same. That the number of buyers for luxury homes in Boulder far outstrips supply, and people buy entry and mid-level houses and turn them into homes that are worth 2 or 3 times the value. And we'll talk about that again when we get to our sale of the week, because
This
that
is
is
true.
exactly that story. Fourth quarter listing, estate sale. Somebody had to get it sold. They priced it low. They chose their family friend, the realtor. I don't know how this listing came to be this particular agent's. She's competent. She's a good agent. The buy side's also a well-known agent, and it ended up selling for 100 over, cash, closing fast. And we'll talk about why that sale got the fourth quarter bidding war more when we get there.
I think you've just teed it up. We could jump right in.
Nope, we're gonna hold
No.
off. We're gonna tease the readers or listeners to talk about the listing of the week. But you
Okay.
added something, Hamish, to the prime effect in our outline. Do you wanna mention what that is?
I won't. Yes, sure. I, as not a avid football follower, Coach Prime is kind of, I acknowledged his existence pretty late. He'd already been signed to CU. Osman was already writing about him, and I was like, okay, well, who is this guy? And of course, he's local. He's head coach at CU, so I gave him a follow and started kind of interacting with his posts and stuff. And it just stood out to me how how religious a lot of his posts were. They were, I was expecting a lot more football content, and I was like, maybe I can learn a little bit of that. But I mean, we talk about gratitude a lot at the office, and in the team and everything, and I see it a lot from Dion, though it's got that kind of religious slant to it. So it was just interesting, and I added that in there in case there was a talking point.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good one. He puts a lot of faith-based content on his socials, and that can be a little controversial for some. It doesn't bother me, and I think it's because even though I'm not religious, I'm a spiritual person, and I have a lot of respect for people of faith. Even if I don't agree with the faith that they've chosen, I'm happy to work with them and respect the faith they have. And maybe it's because my mom's very religious that it doesn't bug me as much. But I've heard that before, that his faith that he's putting out there maybe makes some people feel not so welcome. But at the same time, it didn't even occur to me that, I guess it's unusual for Boulder to see
maybe that was it, yeah.
that much of sort of praising of one particular religious icon. And I think it's people of faith. I have a lot of respect for people and their beliefs, and there's a lot of organizations that believe that that's an important component to life, to have faith in something that's a higher power, and it's such a personal thing for people. So it's never bothered me, and if people are bothered by it, I think they're putting. Personally, I think they're putting too much attention on a celebrity figure. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so let him have faith. Why does it impact your belief or lack of belief? Why does it bother you so much? I certainly would rather see that than like praising consumer culture, right?
Yeah.
Or praising the power of a brand, like go BMW. No offense, Hamish,
no,
but
good.
Really, like I'd rather people identify with that, as long as they're allowing space for others to practice their own beliefs. And we live in this country where you're free to practice your beliefs, congregate as you wish, and so I'm totally fine with it. Yeah. Now, I never told you how I know Dion.
Yeah,
or
that's
what
true.
Connection is to him. So I'll just wrap that up. Dion was married to a woman named Pilar, and I think Pilar is the mother of one or two of his kids. I don't track celebrities that closely, but I know Pilar because her and I were in a SAT prep class back in 1993. Her and I were in a SAT prep class. The teacher's name was Mrs. T. I remember that. She had some sort of injury with her hands because her fingers were all shortened. I remember that, very distinct features. It was just for the summer. And me and my friend Zubair, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry I mentioned you by name, but we were in this SAT prep class with Pilar, and Zubair had he wouldn't stop talking about Pilar. I was friends with Zubair, and every
dude,
day,
you gotta chill out.
he was fawning over Pilar, and she was a volleyball player trying to get into a Division I school, and that's why she was in the prep course, and and years later, I found out she somehow ended up meeting Dion and marrying Dion. What a weird
small world.
It is we're always one step away, from all.
It's 6 degrees of separation, I think, worldwide.
Completely. I've been at events where Elon is there presenting in a small audience at a party. It's a small world. We're all really closely connected.
Yeah.
So
more than you know.
So Pilar, if you're listening, I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah. What's up?
And I hear Dion's single again, so. Oh. Okay, enough about Deion Sanders. Let's move on.
Okay.
I think we hammered the prime effect. Local events. So this past weekend was Historic Boulder's Homes for the Holidays. I did a little personal video on that. You'll see it on my socials. And that was a lot of fun. Leah, my wife, and I went to it. We went to Lucille's beforehand, ate a bunch of beignets, and then went to this Homes for the Holidays event put on by Historic Boulder. And it was mostly featuring ADUs and carriage houses, although there was at least one tour of an actual home that's owned by a well-known architect in town. And it was interesting because even though we were in historic districts, not all of these homes were historic, and the ADUs were definitely not historic looking. And it brought up a lot of conversation around integration. Like in Mapleton Hill, it would make sense that all the houses should look historic, but out in Whittier, not so much. And some of the folks attending were really put off by that.
These like super contemporary ADUs in contrast.
Yeah, there were some attendees that that expressed their displeasure with Historic Boulder for featuring contemporary carriage houses and ADUs. Let's just say there's a certain segment of people that really like looking at houses, and they just really enjoy looking at and talking about the house and telling you what they think.
Your open house crowd, pretty much.
Normal open house crowd.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that on steroids at this event. But lovely. We had really nice weather. Leah and I had a great day. If you want to see any of that, it's in that short little 2-minute video I threw on my socials. And then the Parade of Lights was a lot of fun. I hung out with the cruisers, my peeps. I was really surprised by the turnout. Normally, when I've done the Parade of Lights, I'm in the parade with my friends, usually the cruisers. I used to tow my dog, Marley, on a little carriage on that. We'd light up the carriage with twinkle lights and tow him along. But this year, I decided not to ride, and of course, Marley has passed away a few years ago. But I got to walk around and see some of the other floats and the other people, and holy cow, there's a lot of interesting groups. There are many interesting groups that were in that parade. So if you ever have a chance to check it out, be sure to do so next year. It's over. But there are some upcoming stuff happening, like CU's holiday event at Mackey, right, Hamish?
Yeah, so I have this pulled up. We very briefly went and looked at some events coming up, and I selected a few that I thought were cool. So CU has a event called Holiday Festival 2023. It's going to run from Friday 8th all the way to Sunday the 10th, and Friday's show will be 7:30. Saturday and Sunday will be 4 p.m. And it's a concert.
Friday, this December 8th.
Yes.
Through December 10th. Okay.
Thank you for ironing that out.
Yep.
I'm going to read the description because it's fun, and also tickets start at $23. So be immersed in the comfort and joy of twinkling lights, seasonal greenery, and beautiful music at CU's Boulder Holiday Festival, an enchanting annual tradition for all ages. The long-standing celebration brings together student choirs, bands, and orchestras, along with world-class faculty performers, for a winter concert of holiday favorites and fresh delights.
I mean, that sounds great. I'm a choir nerd. I did
really?
choirs and choruses my whole youth. So I would definitely check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
I think this is actually what I might be going to this one. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Hey, speaking of arts, Osman, are you involved in any of these arts things in Boulder?
I love these little tee-ups. This is not a public event, but the board, the dairy board's having our board happy hour at, I almost said Catacombs, License 1 this week. It's not a public event, but it does give me an opportunity to talk about the dairy, and I strongly support the dairy. I am on the board, and the reason I'm there is because there's an itch that needs to get scratched every once and again about arts and culture and how can I get more involved. Because for many, many years, I just kind of turned it off and focused on growth of business and, nose to the grindstone. And now I'm in a position where I really want to help give back to the community. And the dairy is the performing arts venue and also supports so many smaller organizations with space and other resources. So this is year 2 for my dairy boardship.
Yeah. You joined us last year.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic organization, and we'll be talking more about dairy events in all of our socials going forward, because I want to help promote the dairy and its mission here in Boulder.
I've been a few times as a kid, in high school, and it's cool that I get to work with somebody who's now on the board. It's like, oh wow, look at that go, you know.
It's so funny because sometimes I even miss the events coming up. It's just like it's so busy with other things. I'm like, oh right, there's stuff happening at the dairy, but there's also stuff apparently happening in North Boulder Park, Hamish, that you
These
found
tee
for this
ups.
weekend.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about that?
Man, we are riffing. Okay. This Sunday, December 10th, James is hosting an event. This is on meetup.com, and it's for volleyball bonfire in the park in North Boulder Park. There is many words of description here, though it looks like it could be a relatively good time. That's going to be in the Newlands neighborhood, right? North Boulder Park.
A relative good time, like
To
better
not
than no
going.
bonfire
Yeah.
and no volleyball bonfire. Like the combination of the two is what captured our attention. Like it's volleyball and it's a bonfire. And frankly, you can't have a bonfire in North Boulder Park. Like I don't know, this is almost certainly done without a permit.
I'm
So
wondering, right?
there's zero chance the city of Boulder's like, no problem. Why don't you bring a bunch of combustible stuff into our park and set it on fire?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see a whole lot of promise to the bonfire here in this description, though it does say the what to bring list is you water ball a volleyball water ball you water a volleyball and net and snacks and jokes to crack. So
Yep.
could be fun
And bring your ID because the police are going to need it when you get arrested.
for the bonfire.
For the bonfire. I grew up with real bonfires, right? They would collect pallets and build this giant thing. Upstate New York high school, public high school was a giant public event. It was fun and nuts, the size of the fire. And that's what's in my head. I'm like, this isn't a
Yeah,
it's a bonfire.
when I think of bonfire too, right? The huge roaring, like huge flames.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's zero chance this is actually happening, but check out meetup.com and go let us know if you happen to have gone to the bonfire. Love to hear how it went.
Say hi to James.
Yeah,
It just
hi,
says
James.
hosted by James, so I think that's just
Hosted
really
by
funny.
James. No last name.
Nothing, just James.
James has decided what North Boulder Park needs is a bonfire and some volleyball. All right, let's move on from events and talk a little bit about what we're focused on. So at House Einstein, we've got a bunch of new listings coming in January. We are currently working with I'm currently working with five
Yeah.
sellers and a number of buyers. Ian and Sophie also have their clients. And this is the time of year that we are helping our sellers prep with staging consultations. We did a pricing analysis for a new listing that's coming in Superior. And we had that as a video call this week. And we're connecting our clients with contractors. It's work time for people that are planning to sell their homes in the beginning part of next year. And what we do, or the process that we've evolved over many years, is an actual PowerPoint presentation, room by room. Usually the slide deck is over 50 slides,
Yeah.
where we tell you exactly what you should do in each room. We used to just provide I used to just provide a printed list.
Oh, really?
It started verbal. I used to just be like, this is what you do, and walk out. And then it moved to a printed list. Once upon a time, I even would bring in stagers to recommend to our clients what they should do, but the stagers had really poor social manners and would offend people with their belongings. So we stopped bringing in stagers because they're way too direct. And the PowerPoint is a room by room, almost like a checklist. Here's what we think is a good idea that you should do. Here's what's optional that would help you as well, but you don't have to do this.
Granted, it's all optional, but based
Well,
on our collective experience and
it is all optional, but if you aren't willing to do any work on your home, then you need to price it appropriately. And that's hard for a lot of sellers to stomach. But if you really want to maximize sale price, you do the prep, and your home will sell for more money and will sell faster. And the misery of people tromping through your home or your recently departed family member's home is radically reduced when you do the prep work.
yeah, it's I really enjoy this kind of time of year because we have Well, we have time, right? We were contacted by, I think, a bulk of these clients maybe a month ago, 2 months. And since then, we've just been steadily laying foundation and really making sure that we can kind of maximize what we're about to do with the sale here with this listing. There's we've had clients reach out a year in advance saying, I'm looking and selling in 2024. Can we start the ball rolling now? And that's fantastic, right? It gets the ball rolling sooner than later. We can identify things before they happen and kind of just get the jump on things.
Well, we also can answer questions as the process unfolds. Like in my phone right now, there's a couple of messages I need to respond to today about should we paint this or not paint this? What do we do with this particular thing? And those questions arise as you're working on a house. If you take your time and prep it properly, the reward is definitely there. And there's also a seasonal benefit to going early in the first quarter. You have more time to adjust. And as the market wakes up, the number of buyers that spill into the market exceeds the volume of new listings that appear on market. And that's what happens in a normal year. It's happened every year I've ever been in real estate in Boulder. I track it really closely. It's called the absorption rate. And the absorption rate is in your favor until about the end of May. And from that point forward, it starts to swing the other way. Now, it never really swings towards buyers hard, but you have the market's less forgiving of mistakes in August and September than it is in January and February. And mistakes sometimes happen because of lack of knowledge. We don't know for sure what the market's going to look like in the spring, but we know rates are dropping, and that's good. And we know that there usually are a lot more buyers coming to market in the spring. So it's in, what do they say in Hunger Games? May the odds ever be in your favor. The odds are more in your favor as a seller in the spring.
Yeah.
For buyers, you get more selection. That's what you get, but you also get more competition.
At the cost, right, of competition.
Right, and that means maybe bidding wars. It might mean getting outgunned, and you might be kicking yourself that you weren't shopping in December.
It's a tricky landscape for buyers, right? Because you're juggling, depending on the price point. If we're talking luxury only, where there's a little less rate sensitivity, sure, but, when you're thinking entry level, you're juggling rates, you're juggling selection, and you're juggling competition all at the same time.
You're also juggling confidence. So as you know, Hamish, and shopping for about 6 months before you bought your house, the more homes you see and then you see what they sold for, the higher you will feel, the more confidence you will feel when you write an offer at any price point. And that's really important because even though I might know the price is right,
the buyer's still got to feel it.
You got to feel it. You got to okay, if you, assuming you earn the money, right? You're paying for your house and you care about it. I mean, we do occasionally hear stories of people that don't care about how much money they spend. They're usually not our clients because our clients usually care a lot about
which is why we're chosen.
Which is they're choosing us, right? Because we're helping them make a smart decision, not because we tell them
cool house matches.
Their outfits so well and has great light.
This would suit your car great. Buy this one.
The market only goes up in Boulder, waving his hands around. What are you, crazy? So that's what's happening right now. We're also getting ready for our annual retreat. The holidays are here, so it's a super busy time of year for us here at House Einstein.
Yeah, unusual. I mean, to be expected. Though also, you talk to a lot of agents and you hear, the off season's the off season. It's when we dial back. We've actually found ourselves, I don't know if we've necessarily dialed back, but we've just found more to do,
It's such a fantasy. The idea that real estate is a job that if you're good at this job, you are busy all the time. And there is a seasonal lull that you can sometimes take a little bit larger of a break during. And that's what I try to do. October, November is a good time for me to travel. And this year I did spend some time in India, and I'd like to do more of that. But the reality is I have to have coverage. I have to have a plan because we are meeting with clients year round. And there are agents that you will see them on their socials will be posting photos of their vacations for 2 or 3 weeks. And I don't know how they're out of the market that long, but they must have a good team on the ground.
They're making it, somehow.
All right, so let's move on.
Okay.
That was timing of the market. We talked about what's in our prep to some extent, connection to contractors, staging consultations. Oh, well, there was one question. You said, is professional staging required? Never a requirement, but staged homes sell faster and for more money. And I've never had a staged
This
house
is the
that didn't
truth.
sell. And so it's always a good idea, but it requires an upfront cost. So, all right,
They are
let's.
notably better received. Every time I bring a buyer in, they're always more interested in the stage house.
Yeah, 100%. Good staging overcomes deficits as well as helps present the home in its best light. And buyers can see the dimensionality of rooms better, how the layout might work. And everyone thinks they can set up a house, but the reality is no, they can't. And well staged homes are just such a home run. If with the right stager and the right photography, you can't hire anybody. We're really happy with who we use, and we've been using them for years. So
Okie dokie.
I should say we're partnering with them, not using them. Okay, can we talk about the sale of the week, Hamish? You
Yeah,
ready?
let's get into it.
All right. And this is a new segment for the last couple of weeks we've done is to talk about a recently closed listing. We can't talk about active listings because of MLS rules and realtor rules, but we can talk about closed listings. And this property,
Where can we talk about active listings, Osman?
oh, good point, Hamish, in our newsletter. So if you'd like to learn about active listings, we're only going to put out newsletters now about once a month, but I'll feature a handful of fresh or new listings and discuss their marketing and their valuation and the neighborhoods they're in and why they might make sense or not make sense. But you'll only find that in our client newsletter. And that's a newsletter aimed at prospective clients and active clients. If you're really active, you should set up listing alerts and in direct communication with us because the newsletter is way too slow. But if you are just kind of dabbling in real estate and you want to get a perspective on it, check out our Fresh Listings newsletter. You'll find the sign up form at houseeinstein.com.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Now we'll talk about a sold listing. We've been teasing you about this listing, and it's a really interesting one because it hit the market on November 9th. It went under contract almost immediately, and probably did go immediately. It went through the first weekend. It was listed at 1.395, so just under 1.4, and it sold for $105,000 premium with a mortgage. So it did not sell for cash. I think I mentioned cash earlier. It did not. It was sold with a conventional fixed rate mortgage. There were no concessions, and yeah, 105,000 over list first weekend.
In this market, there's got to
In
be
this
something to it.
In Boulder. Well, Table Mesa is one of the most attractive from a school perspective and also access to open space. And this particular street overlooks Veely Lake. It overlooks a large part of the neighborhood. You get Flatiron views. There's only a handful of houses. So we're talking
wow,
about
yeah.
the address, if you want to look it up, is 3155 Cottrell Court. It's a late 1960s ranch with a basement. And if you look through the photos, you'll see an interior that might have been updated in the 90s or early 2000s. It's been tenant occupied for many years. It's leased through July 2024, according to the listing, which brings up a very interesting question about the mortgage, but we're going to leave that one for another time. When you look at the photos, you see these epic views through every window. And so what's going to happen with this home is the new owner is almost certainly meeting with their architect, meeting with builders in the course of January and February to line up the right team so that 5, 6, 7 months from now, they're able to pull the trigger on a complete gut remodel and turn this into $2.5–3.5 million house easy all day long. It's on a large lot. I mean, look at the lot size, 9,500 square feet. There's only
Yeah.
4 or 5 homes on this perch.
Wow.
And it can support a very big house with a lot of constraints, one of which is height limits. So if you're thinking about this sort of spec project, or maybe you're thinking about building your own dream home, keep in mind that the lowest point on the lot dictates the height of the structure, unless you plan to retain the elevation, the ridge line, and architects and builders can do that. but it's tricky. It adds a lot of cost to construction.
Is that the
There
one
are
where they keep just like a little piece of the original building?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see like a master suite up in the air on stilts, and they literally are building a house all the way around this thing that's floating in the air because they have to keep that height, which is such a joke, right? Like the city is causing so much additional cost and hassle to maintain that height
When it's already been
because we have height
established.
limits in the city of Boulder.
Which,
And
I mean,
basically,
double-edged sword. But this particular right where the pre-existing structure
oh,
is,
I'm so grateful for the height limits. I'm
yeah.
not telling you we shouldn't have height limits. I just think that the city knows the game and they're just forcing these builders to go through
Oh
this
yeah.
elaborate dance to keep the height. But this one won't go through an elaborate dance because it's not that tall to begin with. And even though the lot is steeply raked, I don't know if they'll be able to add another story, but there's plenty of land to go sideways. And so the house it might expand to a 3,500 square foot house or even bigger, but I don't think it necessarily has to go up. And it may not be able to go up because of the steeply raked nature of the lot. But this was a home run. At 1.5 for this land, this person got a fantastic deal. And they're going to build an amazing house, and I can't wait to see it. I hope it's not a spec. I hope it's for their personal use. But of course, spec
Here,
homes are
here.
homes we can resell. I just like seeing people execute a vision for a dream home. And perches like this, I think I see maybe 3 or 4 a year that
Oh, you're
are.
finding your microphone
Oh, did I cover my mic?
a little bit. You're good now.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Yep.
think I think I see 3 or 4 a year like this that might be worth buying to build a future home on, a modern home. This one all day long, fantastic deal. So
I'm trying to look from a topography standpoint, and I can't. But it looks like the slope of the lot heads towards Veely Lake. Kind of
that's right.
northwest.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly correct.
You might
So
not need
this
to go too tall, even.
You don't need to go tall. You
Yeah.
already have views. The question is, if you could go tall, you would probably want to. You'll block your neighbor's views maybe to the south. If you did that, you may not be friends with your neighbors for long, but I don't think you can go up because the north part of that lot is steeply raked. There's steep slope there, and so I doubt you can go up very high, but that's yet to be determined. They have to measure the elevation at the lowest point of the lot and go up. All right, so that's 3155 Cottrell Court, a 2,700 square foot home that sold for just 1.5, which was only 633 a square. It doesn't really even matter what the house looked like. It's 9,500 square feet, the lot, and it was gone really fast in an estate sale in the fourth quarter. And the buyer was right to go to 1.5. They could have gone to 1.6 and still it was worth it all day long. Heck, it could have been 1.75 and it would have been worth it all day long. And probably would have sold for 1.75 in the summer.
Yeah. I'm looking at the slope now. I got it figured out. It's a great property.
Yeah.
You say the house does. I mean, even the house is. I like it.
People look for lots like this for years. For years. They look for a perch that can support a dream home. They are not common, and you have to be patient to find the right one. You have to be lucky. And in this case, the buyer nailed it, even though they went 100,000 over list. And as you know, I'm very conservative on pricing. I don't often encourage people to pay more than list, but in this particular instance, they were right to do so. And it closed pretty fast. So they managed to close it just 20 days after the offer was accepted, 21 days. So I'm really curious about the financing on this, why it says conventional. I don't think it was conventional, but sometimes you read between the lines.
Maybe a massive down payment, something easy.
Well, so what I'm alluding to is that you're not allowed to use a primary residential mortgage and then have it be rented out for 8 months. That's a no-no, but it could be a conventional mortgage that is uniquely structured. I don't know. I don't know anything about this loan.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about it. It raises some questions for me, but it doesn't really matter. They had the financing lined up and the loan went through and the collateral is there all day long and this is Boulder. I mean, people rarely lose their shirts on something like that particular property.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's like dense table mesa, and then this being up on that ridge is a little bit, there's a little bit more space in your area too. It's a cool spot.
Yep. There's a really good chance the seller, by the way, of this property was either in a relationship or they themselves were the original owner of this property. It looks like the sale history, there's no changes from 1976. So they own this, well, they transferred it without any change in value in a personal representative's deed, which is usually indicative of an estate transfer. That just tells you how rare properties like this come on market. So no brainer.
Yeah, kudos to the buyer.
Kudos to the buyer. And lucky listing agent. I think this person got a handful of them with this estate sale, and I'm sure managed it very well. It looked like it priced it well to get it done and sold before the end of the year. So from an estate perspective, that's what you want too. You want to get it sold quickly and pay off your taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So Hamish, you added a little feature this week called the question of the week. Do we have time for it? Let's see. How are we doing?
We are at 1:06.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up quickly.
Okay.
And get to it quickly. We'll cover the basics of this question. So, the question is: what if two of our buyers, or two of your buyers as a real estate agent, or actually, let's reframe that. What if you've selected a real estate agent, and that agent has more than one buyer who's interested in the same property?
There we go. Yep.
What happens then?
Give up.
Well, what's that?
Nothing.
Hamish?
I said give up.
Give up. Well, I got this question a lot in the last 5 years or so because of how low inventory was and how frequently we were seeing bidding wars. And it was not uncommon that I had two buyers that were scheduling showings on the same property. But it was extremely uncommon that I had two buyers that actually wanted to write an offer on the same property. And these are the ground rules that I established with these clients. One, if one of you is just blowing out the other one in capability and willing to structure an offer that's just so much stronger than the other, I'll tell you that your offer is probably not going to be competitive. I'll still submit it. I'll still make the best case. But ultimately, there may be people that want the house more than you and have more financial capability or are less disciplined, are less concerned with that kind of financial expenditure, in which case you may want to stand down and save yourself the heartache and time. And that's a lot more information than you're going to get from the listing agent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just went to the listing agent and wanted to submit an offer blindly, they don't tell you how many other offers that are actually coming in. They blow a lot of smoke and mirrors at you, and sometimes there's no other offers coming in, and they're maintaining the illusion of a bidding war. At least in this case, you'll know the other offer is legit, and I will treat each of you equally and fairly. Mm-hmm. I think in the course of 5 years, 6 years of bidding wars, it only happened once or twice. And both times the clients were really appreciative. They felt like that approach was fair. And I don't think either of the cases they got the house because any of my clients got the house because there was always somebody in those circumstances. The house was in such crazy high demand. And there was somebody who just came in and completely spent too much money. And they're usually not my clients because we look at the comps and we're like, okay, how far above the comps are we willing to go? And it no longer becomes a question of what the house is worth. It's more of a question of what's the money worth to you.
How do we get this, right?
and those aren't my people. My people are so conservative with money. They don't want to spend money flippantly, and I don't encourage them to. I'm usually cautious, and there's always another house. I tell them that. You will never hear from me, oh my God, you have to buy this one. There will never be another opportunity, even with a perch like the one on Cottrell.
Yeah.
There will be others. I tell you, there's other choices. It may not be as amazing as this one, but there will be others, and they could be better. I don't know, and you'll have to make a decision based on your personal comfort with risk, your personal relationship with money, your relationship with your spouse or partner that really wants the house.
And we did talk about this a little bit as well, right? Like the opportunity cost and what it costs to wait and see if another one comes and hits. And that's a personal decision.
Well, they're based on data.
Yeah.
So my favorite approach is let's look at the last 12 months and punch into the MLS your requirements and see how many similar properties you might buy pop up. And if the answer is 50 other houses in the last 12 months you might have bought, well, then let this one go. But if the answer is there was no other house in the last 12 months, or there were 2 other houses in the last 12 months, well, there you have your answer. You're probably not going to see another one like it. And then it's your choice. I've done my job.
Yeah.
You
Tried
can
to
walk,
make it as clear as possible.
we can not write an offer. And in fact, I just want you to write an offer that you feel good about the next day, right? That you don't regret. That's the one thing is like, don't spend $1 more than you're going to regret. Because I can't get you out of this contract unless it's through a legitimate exit. And you shouldn't try because that's also a breach of contract. It's called it's bad faith.
Yeah.
And that also causes you to lose your earnest money. And we're ethical, so we want you to behave ethically too.
Please.
So in any
Please.
event, if the rare instance we have 2 clients that want to write an offer on the same property, we will tell you both that you're in the process of writing an offer. And if you feel uncomfortable with me representing you, we can connect you with somebody on the team that you can then work with directly. Or if there's some weird conflict of interest, like my cousin wants the house, and I feel like I can't adequately be truthful to both parties, I would be with a cousin. Maybe it's my mom that wants the house, okay? In that case, I'll put you in touch with a different agent on the team, and they can represent you, and that way there's no conflict of interest that's insurmountable.
I mean, it makes sense. I asked you when I first started, right, what if you have a seller and a buyer? How do you work that out? But then, you evolve
That's a
and you
different
think of
question.
more things. Yeah, and we covered that one.
That's a different question,
Yeah.
Hamish, and we can cover it again, but not in this podcast because we're out of time. So let's wrap up. What do you say?
I agree.
Well, do you want to do the wrap up or should I?
You're always so eloquent. I think I think you got it.
I don't know if I'm eloquent. People might like hearing from you more. You have that Kiwi accent going on.
Yeah, it's just so strong, isn't it?
All right, I'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So we really appreciate our listeners at the House Einstein podcast. If you're looking for more information about real estate in Boulder or Denver or the mountain towns that are nearby, you can find us at houseeinstein.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast. That helps us get the word out. You can check out our newsletter and sign up for it at houseeinstein.com. And we'll catch you next time.
All righty. Take care.
Thanks for listening.